Jared, welcome back. As world financial markets started to reopen after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, one thing seemed likely: the Trump trade will get even more momentum. So thoughts on that?
As a thought exercise, it might be useful to think about what would happen if that bullet was just a little bit to the right and Trump was killed, right? Like what would have happened in the markets? Like stocks would have been down. How much? If we've been up 15% on the Trump trade, we would have been down 15% probably over the course of a week. It would have been a crash. Gold would have been up even more. Not really sure what bonds would do, but it would, in the stock market, it would have been terrible. And the way I think about risk is like, I think of things in terms of alternate universes, right? So in this universe, the bullet missed, but in many other universes, the bullet hits. And I think we got lucky, but the way I think about this is black swans usually cluster, right? They happen in series. If you think this is crazy, wait till you see what happens next. You could see an assassination attempt on Biden. You could see another assassination attempt on Trump. You could see a whole bunch of stuff. The thing that I keep coming back to is volatility is so incredibly mispriced. I have never seen it more mispriced in my entire career. With the VIX at 12 and the unbelievable political turmoil, assassination attempts, stuff like that. Like, I have never seen volatility more mispriced. And that's not to say that, the story could have a happy ending. The market wants Trump to get elected, so pretend Trump gets elected. And, there's no civil unrest. And, maybe the low volatility was justified, but I think it's mispriced. And I've been buying a bunch of long dated out of the money puts as a way to take advantage of that. And that trade almost paid off big time over the weekend. Obviously, I prefer this outcome, but the whole purpose of a hedge is so that if you're really sad, you're at least happy about something else. You know what I mean? So obviously I would have been very sad if Trump had been assassinated, but at least I would have had a big pile of money, right? That's the whole purpose of a hedge, right? So it's to offset something else. And I think that a lot of people are unhedged. I know that for a fact. A lot of people are just naked long the S&P, naked long the stock market, and it's crazy.
So based on the way the market's been reacting today, is it safe to say that people are starting to price in a Trump landslide at this point?
Yeah, so I've seen some numbers on that. And right now, the betting markets have Trump as a 70% probability. I actually think that's low. I think it's probably higher. But there still is 113 days to go. So there's a lot of things that can happen. Right now, the market is pricing in a 50% chance of a red wave where Republicans take the House and the Senate and the presidency. So there's a 50% chance of that. And the chance of a blue wave where the Democrats take the Senate, the House, and the presidency is now below 2%, right? And that's the way I look at this is, not just for the markets, but for me personally, like, and my taxes going up, like that's the really only bad scenario is if you have a blue wave, right? And there's a 2% chance of that happening at this point in time. Like I said, there's a lot of days left. A lot of stuff can happen. We can't even conceive of it. Trump is not a guaranteed victory. It may seem like it at this point in time on July 15th, but it's not guaranteed.
Nowadays, 4 months in the political world, I mean, that's kind of a lifetime at this point.
Yeah.
Not to turn this into like a political podcast, but do you think Biden's next move is? Do you think there's an actual realistic chance that he steps down, maybe passes it over to Harris, or they do some sort of mini primary? I mean, I know there's a lot of talks going around. I don't know what his next move is. From what I've seen based on polling and all that out there, it does seem like his chances to win are almost non-existent.
I think talk of Biden stepping down I think that's sort of subsided since the assassination attempt.
Yeah.
So I think he's probably going to be the candidate. And if he is the candidate, there's not many scenarios in which he wins. I think the reason Trump is at 70% is because there is still a possibility that he's not the candidate, that it's somebody else, like Kamala Harris or whoever. But I keep saying this over and over again. There is so much time left, like a lot of stuff can happen. So don't get complacent, and also get protection, like buy those puts.
Do you think people are probably even more likely now to flock to safe havens like gold, for example?
It seemed like that today. Gold actually broke out to a small new high today, although it's trading down right now. There's not too many scenarios in which gold goes down, right? Like I kind of struggle to see that happening.
All right, let's go to the next market headline from CNBC. Inflation falls 0.1% in June from prior month, helping case for lower rates. This is the first time since May 2020 that monthly headline CPI came in negative. It's also the slowest annual gain in prices since March 2021. So what are you seeing there, Jared? And how do you think the Fed reacts in the months ahead?
Just about a half an hour ago, Powell was being interviewed and he made some comments. He said that inflation data does support the Fed's view that inflation is coming down. He did not signal a July cut. We do have a FOMC meeting in July. He did not signal a July cut, but I think the September cut at this point is pretty much a done deal. I don't know where it's priced in the markets, but I guess it's probably close to 100%. So I think that's a done deal, but we can't really see beyond the election. Like I don't know what monetary policy is going to look like if Trump is going to be elected or if it's Biden's second term. I don't know what that's going to look like. So,
all right, shifting into the main topic, small caps versus large caps. Can you explain what happened with last week's divergence between small caps and large caps? And for those listening, just to give some context, major U.S. indices rose last Friday as large cap tech stocks recovered from steep losses the previous session, while small caps continued gaining amid optimism that the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates soon.
Basically, small caps generally do better in a low interest rate environment because smaller companies are less dependent on the capital markets for financing. They mostly depend on bank financing, so it's really tied to interest rates. So what you said was what happened on Friday. What the interesting thing, what happened on Thursday was the Nasdaq was down 2% and the Russell was up 3.5%, which has only happened like 4 other times in history. And one of them was the crash of '87, where you had such a divergence between large caps and small caps. So I think that small caps are going to outperform going forward because of interest rates. Also, I think that a lot of quants were wounded on that move. And I think that trade has to continue to be unwound. So, and what does this mean for you? Well, that means that if you have a 401k with a bunch of investment options, and in those investment options is a small cap mutual fund, then maybe think about moving some money into that, because I think that's, and just for context, small cap has underperformed for almost 20 years, like 20 years of small cap underperformance. And I think that's finally coming to an end.
Next up, private equity. Anything new to address regarding the private equity bubble? What are you seeing out there?
Unfortunately, private equity benefits from the Trump trade. The Trump administration, if he gets a second term, is going to be friendly to private equity. They're certainly not going to get rid of the carried interest exemption. So Blackstone, I haven't been watching the other names, but Blackstone has been rallying a lot in the last week. It's up almost 10%, which sucks for me. But I haven't really seen much in the way of news on. I still see the same trickle of stuff about systemic risks and stuff like that. And it's the same old stuff.
So with Trump getting reelected, do you maybe think you would pivot your strategy on this big short
Absolutely
idea?
not. Absolutely not.
Still long-term intact.
No, and I'm starting to think that the real risk to private equity is the credit markets. I think it could be the corporate bond markets. There's a lot of LBO debt out there. So if you start to see cracks in the credit markets, I think that could be the starting gun for private equity unwinding, but that's not really happening yet.
What would you say is like the best way for someone to actively trade this idea? Would you maybe suggest following kind of the Street Freak strategy here?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And Street Freak is just getting started. We have 2 positions in the newsletter that are short private equity. There's going to be more. We're going to add some option positions. We're going to continue to build on this over time.
And what about if somebody just maybe doesn't want to put on shorts, but they want to just kind of avoid the threat that private equity poses to markets? What would you suggest they avoid?
Stocks. I mean, it's kind of hard to insulate yourself from that risk,
right?
Because ultimately, private equity and public equity, the valuations are going to be correlated. So if private equity goes down, public equities are going to go down. So it's kind of the same trade.
The week ahead, are you watching earnings at all? Anything on your radar for the week ahead?
I never watch earnings, but I will say that this earnings season probably has the biggest chance of disappointment than any other earnings season I've seen. I've seen expectations get way ahead of themselves for companies across a bunch of industries. So I think it could underperform slightly, but I don't have a strong view.
Are banks getting kind of hammered here with earnings? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, Wells Fargo was down over 5% on their earnings report. JP Morgan was down. I think Goldman is doing okay. But yeah, some of the big banks were down in their earnings releases.
So what else is what's up with you? How's night moves going?
Good. I have all my blurbs except for one.
And I saw you were posting some of those.
Yeah, the blurbs are fantastic. Yeah. It's funny. I think I'm going to change my strategy on blurbs going forward. With no worries, I was really focused on getting blurbs from like big names. Inevitably, what happens is if you ask a really famous person to blurb your book, they're not going to read it. At best, they might skim it and like give you like a boilerplate blurb. So it's kind of a crappy blurb. I did not do that with Night Moves, and I basically just gave it to my friends. Mm-hmm. And they all read the book and loved it, and I got fantastic blurb. So
I guess there's not going to be a Wally Lamb blurb, huh?
Do you know the story behind that?
Yeah, you told it to me once. He was one of your high school teachers, right?
Yeah, he was my high school teacher. I'm not asking him for a blurb.
Did you guys butt heads a little?
Yeah.
Where are you publishing it through?
It's going to be self-published.
What platform are you using to do that? Do you get like proofs back?
Basically, I hired a book designer. Okay. And he does the editing, the proofreading, the page design. He handles all the stuff with Amazon. He uploads it on KDP. And I basically just pay him a flat fee. So that cuts into my profits. It's probably going to be like 25% of my profits. But he's a professional. There's a lot of, if I did it myself, it would not be as good of a book. It would look like a janky book and it would just suck. And this is going to be, it's going to be more professional looking than most indie publishers, So it's going to be a really good book.
I'm super pumped for that. Do you have a date locked in for it yet?
All I know is early October. With self-publishing on Amazon, you can actually have like a pub date. You just upload it, and whenever they decide to make it live, they make it live. Actually, what I'm going to do is once it goes live, I'm going to order a copy for myself and get it like shipped overnight and just make sure it looks right. And then I'll send out the link to everyone else.
I think that's it for this week. Everyone watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, notification bell, drop us comments. Let us know what you want to hear in future episodes. Jared, thanks again for your time today, and we will talk soon.